out your spirit, pour out your spirit.
Reviewing the outpouring for your refreshing and infilling.
Pour out your spirit, pour out your spirit, pour out your spirit on me.
Good day and welcome to the Outpouring program, and today we hope to have a very exciting discussion on where we're going. I'm sitting in for Minister Marva Berkeley. My name is Rex Henry, and I have with me a pastor and quantity surveyor and leader, community leader and activist, Richard Lord. I want to call him Dr. Richard Lord. I want to call him Pastor Richard Lord. And we started the series where we called him Mr. Richard Lord. And he carries all those hats. And what we were doing initially was to start a series on how we as a community, in the business community, need to get involved in making our society a more successful, more productive area. And he had put his foot in the water, as a friend of mine liked to say, in terms of this process, has been doing it for 7 years, and he had some things to teach us. But today will be the end of this series, and next week we'll be doing something new but related to men as well. But this week we want to engage a discussion about the context in which we're doing what we're doing. Over the last 4 weeks, we've talked about how helping young men coming out of crime and out of the drug culture and out of those things required giving them opportunities, dealing with their emotional and sociological challenges, and then sometimes helping them to start a business and, funding and some of the challenges that we've had. Today, we know that it can't be done continuously if you can't improve the context in which we want these young men and women, even though men are our targets, but women as well, how we can help them become more successful by shaping the context. So as we speak, part of our go-to is a discussion about how we're going to train technical skills and that kind of thing. So I'm going to introduce Pastor Lord to make his contribution, his opening statement with respect to the environment. The name Singapore popped up, and I'm going to let him make his introductory statements basically about how we're going to shape this discussion for the next half hour. Thank you for being with us, and Brother Lord.
Good morning, and again, welcome to the discussion today. We made reference to Singapore as a reference to where we want to go. And the Singapore model really, not that I'm claiming that I'm an expert on the model.
Right.
The Singapore model embraced a number of different facets as how they shaped what they have today. It embraced leadership from the political side. It embraced social structures. It embraced education. It embraced the financial structure. So what happened is that they built a society, a country, on certain pillars. And it's very interesting that many times we don't understand that the church is church or community or government or a nation. And it's in particular, the church needs to understand what I'm going to say. There are some pillars upon which any kingdom, any major society built upon. Mm-hmm. You have to build. You have government, leadership. You have the financial side of system. Mm-hmm. You have the education. Mm-hmm. You have the cultural. You have the media. Mm-hmm. You have religion. Mm-hmm. And if you understand how to, each of these pillars must be supported to bear the weight of what you're building. When you leave out one or minimize the other, it's like Samson pulled along the pillars of, and you, until you understand how to build the pillars, you run the risk of building incorrectly. So you first have to identify the pillars, and that is one of the things that Singapore did. They identified the pillars upon which they want to build Singapore, which is today, the Singapore today, and they built upon that.
But essentially, we know that it's a country that had no resources. So they had to bring much of their technologies imported and that kind of thing. You've worked with some of the major companies in this country. You've traveled, and you have also worked across the region. And you've seen what is happening with men, and that's why you chose to get involved in. What is the current education system in our Caribbean context missing? What are we not doing, and what do we need to do to make ourselves more ready for changes that are coming? And I want to caveat this with, currently as we speak, the BRICS countries, the 10 BRICS countries now are coming up with an alternative currency system. This generation, the 2024 generation, lived in a world that's dominated from the United States and NATO, and they've called the shots for the last 30 years since the collapse of the USSR. And now, countries that have felt oppressed for a long time are now attempting to throw off that oppression and stuff. And they're coming up with their own monetary system, they're retooling, they're reclaiming their natural resources and the right to sell it. And the fear that they're going to get cut off from the US currency has made them create their own currency. And trade among them is more than the G7 nations at this time. So that's a wider context. Pull that into Trinidad and Tobago, into the region that we're in. We're in the middle of that change, that polarized change. How do we as small economies retool education to make ourselves adaptable, relevant, survivalist in a changing world?
Well, there are two things. One, we have obviously modeled our education system from a previous system. We had the British, and then we switched somehow to the American system, and we see the result of all of that. As you go around the Caribbean, there are different adaptation to the education system. For example, in Guyana, what they do, where we have a separate trade school and stuff like that, you find that all the students, most of them, especially the boys, must learn a trade. That is part of the thing. So, because we worked with some of these Guyanese, and they could do plumbing, they would major in one thing. A carpenter, a mason.
They have a specialist.
Yes, they could do electrical, they could do plumbing, they could do general trade.
But you know that just to stick in, they're saying that of the Caribbean countries now that's growing economically, Guyana is now growing at 50% GDP.
Yes.
So unlike most of the countries of the world, they're the fastest growing GDP in the region. But continue to make the point.
So what we find happening is that if you go to Grenada, they have a slightly different model, because you find that once you do which is the O levels, they go to college and they almost prepare them to go to university. Whereas our A levels, not that I'm saying we copying that, but they come out of the school uniform, they come to school for the college period, dressed in their casual clothes. And of course they have to dress appropriately. And then they have, at that level, they also have associate degree structure. For example, you could do associate in electrical, in air condition, and you could do the A level as we have it, or A level, pure A levels.
Right.
So in other words, at that level they integrate, so that you could, even if you didn't go beyond that, you could fall into society and be productive.
Right.
So
That's like getting a cut start associate degree,
Yes.
which could make you more efficient than the
Yeah.
person with a UE degree, but they're not considered as good as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it's so integrated into the fabric of the society.
Right.
It's like we have a system where that is a separate school and that's a separate. It's not hardwired.
But in that case, let's ask the question. If we do not have a vision for where we want to be, like some years ago, we had a prime minister in Trinidad and Tobago who had a 2030 vision. He brought some business people together. They kind of crafted a vision for the country. Strangely enough, many Trinbagonians don't even know what that vision is, what was in that plan. There was the people of Tobago, I think, when COVID came out, pulled some business people together and came up with a plan for Tobago. Again, the people of Tobago does not know what's in that plan. And that plan has pretty much fallen aside. Now, many years ago, I did a plan, my team did a plan for Pastor Butcher Baird when he was, Dr. Baird when he was as a representative of the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. And our team suggested or looked at our natural resources because that was an area of great concern for him. He was pointing out at the time that the United States used seawater for transfer. The Navy used that if you need to do that thing with blood transfusions and you need that salination in your blood and that kind of thing. They were able to harness that capacity to do that. We were looking at paint coming out of the sponges in the reefs. We were looking at the fact that Tobago still at the time had a pristine reef. We didn't suffer the kind of damage on the reef that we have now, the bleaching. And we looked at our pristine forest. We looked at coming up with something. So our strategic plan at the time, Tobago's population was about 33,000 people at the time. And we were thinking that universities like Berkeley had 33,000 students. So if we became an education delivery island built around some of our core natural resources, we could bring people here to study and then double our population. These people who are coming in are not necessarily coming in as families, they're coming in as spenders because only 20% of any population has money. So these people will be coming in for the purpose of education, for the purpose of research and development, and for that we could have converted what was now being discovered and exposed and that kind of thing on the island. And it would have allowed us to have an education tourism so that the first time you get a problem in your reef or oil spill or something, your tourism wouldn't shut down because you have 33,000 students that are here to study. They had to stay. Their families had to come and visit them. Some of them may be married, So they had to stay. They're not going anywhere because the beach shut down. But they would also play a role in the studies and the research and the development and that kind of story. Part of, from where you sit, combining professionalism with your kingdom values, what sort of vision, and this is, 20 years later, 25 years later, what sort of vision do you think that Tobago, maybe and then maybe spread it nationally. What kind of vision do we need to craft to retool the education system that we need to create?
Before I go on, I just want to lay on the table that the discussion we're having today is part and parcel of the broader context that we want to achieve in terms of men, in terms of integrating the whole society.
Yeah.
With men playing a major role in a society, because we've seen men falling away and falling out.
Right.
And that is part of the fallout which we want to correct.
Yeah.
In terms of the education system, how do we remodel that? I think the first thing we have to do is to determine what kind of Tobago we want to make.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
every so often we have these bright ideas, plenty discussions. As you see, some people know what is in the paper that is produced. Most people don't know. There are different segments and sectors of people who have different interests and interest groups. And that is where we have a problem. It is not a common denominator. It is still fragmenting. And as we listen to this, sometimes you always pass it off and say, well, the talk show again. And after a few years, a few months, that will just be swept under the carpet. A new set of players come in. They forget that, they bring their own spin on it, and we just swirling around and really producing nothing. So what we have to do collectively, and this is not me, collectively, is to determine what kind of Tobago we want. And once we collectively agree and decide what we want, as opposed to what we have maybe, or what we have and what we want to keep, those are the major decisions that we have to make. And everybody have to buy into that, so to speak. And once we determine those things, we bring all the interest groups together. Of course, that is easier said than done. But we bring all of the heads together and we say, okay, this is the way. Or somebody take the lead and, make those kind of decisions. And those decisions has to be common. We know people have different interests, left, right, center. So that is not where it is. And that's why we say there must be a common denominator. What it is that the man in the street wants, the man who is in the middle and the upper level and educated, the uneducated, once we decide that, then we can move forward. There are different countries that have had different models, different political systems, different economic systems, and they've tried it over time. Some fail and some succeeded. We don't really have to invent. There's very little that we need really to invent. All we need is to go and study successes, where the thing is success. Of course, we'll have to model it, shape it to our culture, to our understanding, to where we are economically, socially, so by so. So the point I want to make is this: we do not want too much of talk. We need people who are willing to put their hands to the plow, put their resources there, because we're talking generations to come. And that's why I'm saying we need to decide, and we need to understand that this is not the generation that we inherited. Let's forget that. This is not the generation, but if we don't do something, the generation that will inherit our inactivity, indecisions, and so on, will not look like now.
And probably social incompetence.
And these are the things that we need to begin to pay attention to.
Well, let's build on that. I want to drill back to the example you used for Guyana, because I wasn't aware of what you said before about the Guyanese model. And I think let's look at what happened there based on what's in the public domain. We know that Guyana for a while struggled financially. If they were successful in creating a system where they equipped their citizens to be multi-talented and multi-gifted, because you would need to be that in a society where you have limited economic opportunities, massive migration, stagnation, and then in some ways, for some instances, isolation from the rest of the region. Right. By preparing citizens to be fully equipped, the discovery of oil and gas meant that many of their citizens now can take advantage of the companies coming in and needing to hire people who are indigenous. So they say luck is preparation meeting opportunity. Right. We have a challenge where I think the fact that we have a society with so many young men on the streets is an indication that we're, unlike Guyana, we did not prepare well. We failed to prepare. And we failed to prepare because there were some biases, some pride, some stupidity in our education system. We thought that we could get everybody into the information age. So Bill Gates, Microsoft, that we admire, was a man himself who'd never learned the software that everybody went and paid money for in the early 90s to become certified in. And then we as a society become proud of getting certificates from people who never went to study those things, who invented those things and built those things. And we never saw the dichotomy in the conversation, that we were giving respect to people who were doing the same things that we hated in our own society. Singapore has invented some really bright ideas. They have an underground flooding system that sucks excess water, puts it underground. It could collect thousands of gallons, hundreds of thousands of gallons of excess water so they could reduce flooding and all that kind of story. They're building on what do we have, what do we need, where do we need to take to society, what can we build. We don't have enough space to go wide because we have limited land, so we either have to go up or we have to go down underground. I'm saying that there is a challenge, because one of the things that we're discussing with how do we meet the challenges of our young men and women, it meant therefore that while we are planning, we have to be doing. Because the time it takes to plan, people are going to fall off and say it's a talk shop.
Yeah.
And if we execute without something of a plan, we're going to have to do over some of the things we executed because it didn't have a plan when we were doing it. We were just shooting from the hip. But I still believe that both of those things need to happen. We need to execute somewhat, and then we need to teach, train, research, invent, and that kind of thing. We have people that we need to stop from bleeding into the streets now. That's our current problem. Young men without a vision, without a purpose are going into the streets now. So we've got a current problem. So whether we have a complete plan or not, we need a means to stop them getting into the streets, because we've established that is a dangerous thing. We need to take some of the young men off the streets, right? Because they'll get deeper into the criminal activity. We need to keep them out of prison, because they go to prison and they get educated at the university of the jail, and they pick up all kinds of skills and nasty habits like shooting people to use it for spiritual immunity against persecution and all that kind of story. So we need to stop that. It means, therefore, that we have to have some kind of effort currently to get some sort of technical vocational school now that equips those young men to survive and to change. We need to do that now while we're crafting a plan.
Yes.
Right? We also need to have, in the next 5 minutes, some sort of mechanism to come up with a plan. And then we need to have some innovative construction ideas that challenges the masculinity in the male to build a better place, a better island, a better country. Because the teaching institutions we create must be also teach leadership and moral values, as well as creativity and innovation, not just skills. So how do you see, or what do you think we need to do in terms of the components in the next 4.5 minutes?
Well, one of the things we have to identify in everything that we do, if we want to build something that's lasting, one of the first things we have to put in place is very strong leadership. There is none of these places that have succeeded where the leadership was weak or wasn't willing to take the risk.
Okay.
So one person say that and 10 criticize. If you're convinced and convicted that this is the direction that we're going, we're not talking about bullying people. We're talking about strong leadership.
Commitment to your vision.
Yes.
And willing to take responsibility for failure or success.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why you have to buy into the people. Right? Let them know what is happening. But there must be strong leadership. I'm not talking about people who don't care about this and don't care about that. I'm talking about strong leadership that incorporates things. But there must be leadership. Not that you come, well, you change your mind tomorrow and next group come in and they do this and we're going absolutely nowhere. We need strong leadership. That's one of the weaknesses we have. We do not have strong leadership.
Yeah.
We don't have people who are willing to take risk, opposition, criticism, and be steadfast.
Right. Okay.
That's one of the first things we need to identify, and we need to deal with it.
Okay. So we need leadership development.
We need leadership.
Okay.
And I think that's where we start. We need to attack things where it is beginning to happen. We need to go to the homes, we need to talk to the fathers, we need to talk to the mothers, we need to strip away certain things, we need to stop certain things, we need to put certain regulations in place, enforce the regulations without corrupt practices. Those are the foundations we need to build. If we don't have that, trust me, we could talk and have the best plan as long as we do not have strong leadership, committed individuals, people willing to put the resources behind that and to pursue it with aggression and strength while you are aware of who might be hurting, because trust me, somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, because if you are in power and you are corrupt, you don't want a transparent resource sharing system, because it means you have no corruption money to get.
Correct.
You can't be bribed.
Correct. You know, so that is the main thing I want to put on the table, because I mean we could spread the discussion, but I am putting on the table that when Singapore modeled their system, the president, I don't know if they call him president or prime minister of that nation, he died maybe about 10 years ago, right? And he held the realm. Now, I'm not saying that this is the model. He was in the, he stayed in that from the time he structured that to the time he died.
Okay. So
Right?
he pushed, he clarified, he delivered,
And he
willing to
showed
take
you.
the licks, yeah.
And he had the whole nation behind him.
Right.
Strong, dedicated leadership. That's what we need to start with.
All right. So, folks, we're out of time, and I didn't realize that our time has run out. So we want to thank you for partnering with us. We're going to keep talking. We're going to keep doing. In fact, we're going to try to get something off the ground within the next few weeks if we can. Remember, we're trying to get this men fellowship, this men training, leadership training. As we begin, we're getting into the homes and into the schools. Train men to be leaders and mentors and interveners into the situation. So we're here. This is the Outpouring program. Thank you for your support. We thank you for supporting TIN. And we're here on the island of Channel 5, our own indigenous cable station. And we look forward to seeing you next week, God willing, as we continue to build a better Christian and secular community. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Pour out your spirit. Pour out your spirit.
Be viewing the Outpouring for your refreshing and infilling.
Pour out your spirit. Pour out your spirit. Pour